All right. So again, welcome everyone. Good morning. To get started here, I just want to remind folks of this meeting being recorded, and we will provide the recording and copy of the presentation to everyone, along with meeting summary notes. Some days after the meeting. So we'll put all those materials together, package it all together for you in one nice email that you all could then review it again at your leisure. And there's a couple of other folks that will be joining the WDAC in future quarterly meetings, but couldn't make it today. So we'll be providing that information for them as well. And if you can please rename yourself in the image on Zoom, putting your name and organization. And then also please type in the chat your name and organization as well. Let's introduce ourselves in the chat. And let's all make sure we are muted throughout the presentation, and hold your questions till after the presentation when we go into Q&A and the discussion portion of this webinar. So definitely please, we're going to cover a lot of information, but definitely make note of your questions. We definitely want to get through it with you all. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to my colleague, Adewale.
Thank you, Giovanni. And again, for those that just joined, my name is Adewale Ogunbadajo, pronouns he, him, and I'm the Vice President of Workforce Development for Grid Alternatives. So just to get into our meeting agenda, we're going to do the welcome, and then we're going to follow that up with some team introductions. And then we'll get into Grid Alternatives mission and work, then look at the overall project overview, as well as the overview of the Workforce Development Advisory Committee. Then we'll follow that up with some Q&A, as well as some discussion questions that we have. And then finally, we'll finish it off with next steps. So in terms of team introductions, again, I've already said who I am a couple of times, but Grid Alternatives in this role is part of the community engagement and workforce development team. And I will pass it to Stella Ursua to introduce herself.
Thank you, Adewale, and thanks everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it. We know that we are all very, very busy people, so thank you. My role at the LA office of Grid Alternatives, I'm the Senior Programs and Partnerships Manager. I've been with the organization going on 6 years next month. So thank you, and I'll hand it over to, let's see, Shamika's not able to join us today. So Giovanni, if you would just introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Stella. Good morning again, everyone. My name is Giovanni Hernandez, and I am the Senior Community Engagement Coordinator on this project for the GRID team here. Pleasure to make everyone's acquaintance here and to have you all join us. I'll kick it off over to our colleagues over at CalSTART.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nate Fernandez. I'm a technical project manager here on the Clean Fuels and Infrastructure team at CalSTART. And Alicia, I don't know if we have you with us, but would you like to go next?
Hi, everybody. So great to be with all of you. And thank you so much, Grid Alternatives team, for your great work in kicking off this Workforce Development Committee meeting. My name is Alicia Gildy. I'm Vice President of Clean Fuels and Infrastructure, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tuan, and I'm a project manager with CalSTART in the Clean Fuels and Infrastructure Department. Super excited to have you all today, and we're going to have a great meeting for you.
Great. I'd like to pass it on to our EPRI team.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kristen Bush. I am an engineer scientist on EPRI's electric transportation team, and I'm really excited to get things kicked off with all of you.
Is there anybody else from the EPRI team present this morning?
Don't see anyone
I,
else.
I think that may be it for
Okay.
the EPRI team. But I do see Ben Wender from CEC that just joined us. Would love to open up the space for a quick introduction there.
Sure, thanks so much, and great to see the team getting together here. My name's Ben Wender. I'm staff in the CEC's Research and Development Division. Work closely with the project team and really excited to hear the discussions today. Thanks for the chance to introduce myself and good to see you all.
Thank you. And we'd also like to acknowledge SCE's Jordan Smith as a consulting engineer. So thanks everybody for your introductions. Let's get into it a little bit about GRID's mission and some of the things that we've done to date. So GRID Alternatives envisions a rapid, equitable transition to a world powered by renewable energy that benefits everyone. And our mission is really to build community power solutions to advance economic and environmental justice through renewable energy. Just some of the impacts that we've had over the course of our work, in Greater Los Angeles, we've been able to serve over 2,400 households, as well as 27 community facilities. And during the lifetimes of the systems, that we've installed, we're going to save, collectively more than $58 million. And then in terms of like the environmental impact or from a planet standpoint, the systems are going to produce more than 285 million kilowatt hours while preventing over 136,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, which is equivalent to taking over 26,000 cars off the road for the year. And then, one of the things that are most important to me from a workforce development standpoint, but also I would say in terms of community impact, is the employment piece. And we've had over 4,000 individuals on the roof with us, since we started our workforce development close to a decade ago. And we provided over 66,000 training hours. And we have over 83 partners, regionally within the Greater Los Angeles region, and certainly hundreds more across the regions that we work with throughout the country. So I'd like to pass it back over to the CalSTAR team to really address the problem and what we're going to be dealing with here from the WDAC or the committee standpoint.
Thank you, Adewale. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to briefly cover the problem that's involved with the role of this project. As you may know, in California, the transportation sector is the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and it's a major contributor to criteria pollutant emissions. In this chart here, you can see the breakdown of the total California emissions, where transportation accounts for more than a third of total emissions. And with the scope of this project, our targeted freight corridors are surrounded by highly impacted communities facing adverse health and economic impacts due to transportation emissions. Some of these effects are reflected in the increased hospitalizations, the surge in cases of severe asthma, the tremendous health costs, the amount of missed days of work and school, and just the overall quality of life for millions of Californians living within 10 miles of these freight corridors. So we must prioritize the adoption of zero-emission alternatives in order to improve regional air quality, mitigate the health impacts on these communities, and reduce the overall greenhouse gas emissions in California. However, drayage fleets that are beginning to adopt these zero-emission trucks are facing various challenges in this process, some of which includes understanding and adapting performance and flexibility of battery electric vehicle drayage trucks to meet operational needs, installing necessary infrastructure in locations with limited physical space and electrical capacity, and lastly, resolving the issue in which fleets and community needs are not always well connected with trucks and infrastructure manufacturers and utilities. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Nate to discuss the overview of the project.
Thanks, Tuan. So the purpose of the e-truck Retta project is really to help solve these problems that Tuan mentioned. And we're doing this by creating a California research hub to facilitate and accelerate the electrification of heavy-duty vehicle markets in key areas, specifically trucks involved in drayage activities, which is the movement of goods to and from the ports. And in order to electrify these drayage trucks, what we're really focusing on is high power charging. And what this looks like in more detail is advancing the research, development, and demonstration activities for high power charging. Currently, electric trucks charge at about 250 kilowatts, maybe 350 kilowatts at most of power, and high power charging helps to advance that, especially at megawatt levels, to 3 times as much power for these heavy duty trucks. And we're engaging a variety of stakeholders with a community first approach to incorporate the needs of pollution burdened and impacted communities. We're engaging truck fleets, charging equipment and service providers, electric utilities and planning agencies, and we're planning, designing, and deploying an innovative, scalable public corridor charging strategies for heavy duty electric trucks, beginning with drayage trucks. And can you go to the next slide, please? So the key activities, just to reiterate, are community engagement, workforce development, fleet needs and technology maturity assessment, advancing high power charging system research and development, phase 1 pilot deployment, a plan for phase 2 public corridor network, and phase 2 implementation, technology and knowledge transfer activities. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide is a little busy, but all we're trying to show here is how all the key individuals, like all of you, will be informing the phases of this project. And the first phase sort of culminates with the pilot site deployment. We're planning at 2 locations where we'll be demonstrating this megawatt level charging technology. The second phase of the project is really focused on corridor planning to build out a network of high power chargers along key freight corridors. And these corridors are identified based on travel volume, grid connection, optimized control, site location, and estimates, whether they have distributed energy resources and on-site storage integration and economic models. And the second phase sort of culminates with the deployment and outreach which consists of data collection, lessons learned, and best practices, further workforce development, stakeholder communication, and beyond, really, so that we can try to replicate the activities of this project and the successes of this project statewide, nationwide, and beyond. Next slide, please. So this is a breakdown of the stakeholder ecosystem, really, that makes up all of our advisory committees, such as the WDAC here. So the Technical Advisory Committee ensures member knowledge and engagement findings from our committees guide the success of overall project outcomes. It's composed of CEC and project leads, chairs and co-chairs from the other advisory committees so that we avoid silos, industry experts, and government agency representatives. The CTAC, the Community First Technical Advisory Committee, evaluates community needs, barriers, and solutions, and ensures engagement findings are incorporated into the project to best serve and benefit low-income and disadvantaged communities. And it's composed of community-based organizations, government, nonprofits, academia, industry, just to name a few. The ITAC, the Industry Technology Advisory Committee, supports fleet assessment, making sure that we're meeting the needs of all these fleets, technology advancement and corridor planning, and it's mainly composed of fleets, truck OEMs, EVSPs, service providers, load serving entities, and port and warehouse operators and utilities. So lastly, we have the WDAC, the Workforce Development Advisory Committee, which focuses on workforce development and training needs of zero emission technology industry and supports growth opportunities for local and frontline communities impacted by freight movement. And it's mostly composed of academia, government, nonprofits, community-based organizations, and more. And next slide, please. And Adewale will be covering the WDAC in much greater detail in a bit, so stay tuned. So you can see the pilot locations in red on this map here, one near or in the San Pedro Bay Port area, and one in the Inland Empire near truck distribution centers. We're also developing a test center, and with the help of Southern California Edison, where companies can use a lab and equipment to test the high power charging technology. And this will be especially useful for new and small companies. And for deployment and outreach, we're going to be collecting data and tracking lessons learned in all our activities like workforce development, and compiling all this with the intention of using it to inform future projects. Next slide, please. So high power megawatt charging technology, it's really capable of providing 100 miles of range for 10 minutes of charge for a heavy duty electric truck. And that's what's really key for the drayage truck, is this kind of range capability. That's really important for the duty cycle, the day-to-day business, like operational activity of a drayage, heavy duty drayage truck. And we're using only open standards for connectors and communications for interoperability across different vehicles and control systems. We're focusing on modular designs that can be scaled up with future electric truck deployment. And the goal is for this to be delivered at a total cost below $500 per kilowatt. Next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, so lastly, we're going to be having the first of its kind zero emission freight corridor that we're planning in this project. We're going to be identifying site locations to support these battery electric trucks. We're taking a community-driven approach, making sure that we understand the needs of the affected communities all along this key freight corridor. And this will involve building a heat map to see how we're prioritizing sites based on user needs and convenient access, major throughput areas for freight volume, grid capacity, and capabilities like distributed energy resources and on-site storage integration, and whether or not these sites are in disadvantaged or highly impacted communities. And we'll be using this heat map and developing it throughout the life of the project to inform the development of the corridor. So that is, I want to call it brief, but I don't know if I can call it brief anymore. That is an overview of the project. And with that, I will hand it over to Adewale.
Thanks, Nate. That was a great overview. And I think, you can just see all the potential for the work that we're working on. And I would just say that it's really exciting times, as we look at the broader clean energy transition, and just, to be able to provide, for example, 100 miles of charge within, a 10-minute span is a proof that, the technology is happening very quickly. And we want to make sure that we're preparing, individuals from our local communities to step into these opportunities. So, to talk a little bit about the, advisory committee's goals, objectives, and the functions, the goals will really be to ensure that pollution impacted, underserved, and tribal communities are involved in creating and guiding the initiative, and that, the priority communities are involved and benefit from the larger clean energy transition itself. So when we talk about MD, HD electrification, we know that there's many jobs that are going to be created, and there's a resultant, economic opportunities that will also be created. So the goal is to make sure that our communities, are directly involved, and there's some guidance there in terms of how we go about that. The objectives are to make sure that we inform the project on workforce development needs and the desired impacts for the priority communities, as well as we communicate project activities to relevant key partners and stakeholders. And then we want to make sure that there's the promotion of equity and workforce development opportunities in the priority communities, and that the communities we serve are not being, locked out of access to these opportunities. And then we want to foster workforce development partnerships in the targeted priority communities for zero emission freight corridor technology and development, as well as the planning and the job creation piece. So our function as a committee will be to provide input on the workforce development plan, support equity and workforce development goals, and then inform the workforce development plan and its accompanying activities. So to dive in a little deeper on the next slide, please. We want to make sure from a functional standpoint, and providing input on the workforce development plan, the strategy should really be to support the review and the input process of the workforce development plan. And then we want to identify relevant equity metrics within workforce opportunities. We want to identify the training and employment opportunities so that we can convey that to the community and know how best to prepare the community. And then we want to increase awareness of MDHD, which is medium duty, heavy duty, transportation sector, and economic opportunities within the priority communities. And then we want to ensure prioritization of workforce resources to benefit disadvantaged and low-income communities. Next slide, please. The second function will be to support equity and workforce development goals. So that's to build a consortium of stakeholder leadership to advance zero emission freight training and employment opportunities. Then we want to present goals and objectives of the project to the stakeholders and the industry partners nearby the freight corridors, and then advise on how to engage impacted communities in workforce development planning for the MDHD trucks for the purposes of replication and scalability. I think Nate might have alluded to it earlier, but what I think we really hope to be is a model that can be expanded on a national scale. Next slide, please. So the third function would be to inform the workforce development plan and its accompanying activities. And the strategy there would be to develop strategy to create partnerships with industry, academia, and utilities to tailor program development, provide input for the development of MDHD curriculum and workforce collateral, and then to provide recommendations on how to gather stakeholder feedback and on best practices for increasing participation in the workforce development activities. Next slide, please. And I think just better understanding who is the stakeholder community, who are the people in the room with us today that, we hope that will join this committee and will be key to the strategy and the inputs that we need to be effective to the communities that we serve. And that includes academia, nonprofits, CBOs or community-based organizations, healthcare organizations, local government, environmental justice or EJ organizations. We want labor in the room as well. And then we want other workforce development organizations as well as other industry partners. And the overall responsibilities of the Workforce Development Advisory Committee will be to develop a workforce development plan and training needs for the zero emission technology industry, support growth opportunities for local and frontline communities impacted by freight movement, and then provide input to promote equity and workforce development opportunities in these priority communities. And lastly, we want to ensure engagement findings are incorporated into the project to best serve and benefit pollution impacted, low income and disadvantaged communities. So I think this is a tremendous opportunity for a long time, individuals that have lived in these freight corridors. Their health has, been most impacted by the movement of goods. And we have a chance to not only address it from an environmental standpoint, but also to make sure that these communities are reaping some of the economic benefits. Next slide, please. So again, in terms of contributions to the project, and what your lift would be kind of as one of the committee members would be meet on a quarterly basis, provide feedback and development in the development of a workforce development plan, assist in the development of new training materials that improve upon existing resources related to MDHD, ZEV, or zero emissions vehicles, transportation sector, and then assist in the development of outreach strategies to support the broader workforce development network and capacity building. So with that, I would like to, get us into the Q&A section and see if you have any questions. And then from there, we would jump into the discussion component. So I will open the floor to any questions that anyone may have, particularly, some of the stakeholders that we would want to join us for this committee.
And folks, for this piece for Q&A, feel free to, either type it in the chat or unmute yourself to ask your question verbally or raise your hand, whatever you feel comfortable with, in asking your question. But thank you all.
So I'm Aaron Thompson with the Economic and Workforce Development Department. Has your organization already begun partnering with trainers in this particular industry who can train individuals who are interested in working in this field? Anyone hear me?
Yes, Stella, do you want to tackle that, or would you like me to jump in?
Oh, I'm sorry. A great question. And so just to say that, this is part of the process in the next few months. We were hoping to get a good group of workforce development organizations here, so that we can start to partner, number one, but also to dive deep into, what that's going to look like, right? We're going to work with industry partners to identify, what type of skills are we looking at? What type of knowledge, what type of capabilities, right? And so part of this whole effort as well is to conduct industry partner presentations so that they can come and talk to us about their organizations, their products and services, and then what they're looking for from potential employees and from potential workforce programs. So we're already starting those meetings. So yes, it's just
Okay.
work in progress. Thank you. Great.
Okay, and I didn't properly identify myself. I'm with the City of Los Angeles Economic and Workforce Development Department.
Very good.
Great.
Thank you.
Another one of our good partners. And I would add to what, Stella said, and I think we're in the very early stages, and that's one of the, drivers for this committee, is so that we can figure out who are the right partners to work with, from training to outreach to implementation. So this is really being on the ground and getting it done from the very early stages, I would say.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
I see Wen Chen had his hand up. Go
Thank
for
you,
it.
Giovanni. This is Wen Chen from Cal Poly Pomona. And I have some question about the meeting time, because we noticed that WDAC will meet on the quarterly basis. So how many years it will last, and will the room be the major platform in the future as well? My two questions.
Yeah, Stella, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think once we identify the committee members, then we will get together to determine the best time
Yes.
for everybody to meet.
Yes. Yes.
And
We will have a poll in just a little bit when that Giovanni will administer. And so we'll start to identify the dates and times. We want it to be as convenient as possible for all of you, for as many of you that can attend. And so we'll try to determine that best time, as soon as we get done here today.
Sorry,
You had
slight,
another-
Miss Stella, just slight correction on that. We do already have the times and dates identified for the future
okay.
quarterly meetings. However, you are correct in the sense that we will launch a poll for a subcommittee
That's right.
the subcommittee for the WDAC that we would like to convene a subcommittee of this group here to review our draft workforce development plan that we've put together, we would love feedback from our partners, from members of this advisory committee to look at it, to give us some suggestions, some, what are we missing? What's missing? What should we change, right? What are we forgetting, right? We definitely want to hear from you. And so to do that, we're going to convene a smaller, meeting this quarter. We would like to hopefully make that happen in the next couple of weeks. So we will launch a poll in a little bit to figure out what is the best time of day and day of the week to convene a small group of folks in the coming weeks for those purposes. And then towards the end of this presentation, I will show everyone a slide of the future quarterly meetings that we already have. So the next meeting will not be, until next year in 2023. So we'll show everyone that calendar so folks can start setting aside their, holding that in their calendars. Hope that answers the question. And I think you also asked,
How many years? Yeah.
How many years?
Yeah. Ms. Stella, I know we have it all lined up for all of, all 4 quarters, right? 4 meetings next year. Are we going beyond that, Ms. Stella? Correct me if I'm wrong. If we're going beyond 2023.
Yeah, so then after we get through this first phase, then we'll move into phase 2 when, we will determine, the additional work that needs to take place as well. There will be more focus, like we're focusing right now on the 710, right? But then we'll move into the 10 corridor. And we're hoping that, this pilot serves as, the eventual launch, for other corridors. So, we're hoping that this is really successful. We get the community engagement that we need, get the workforce development engagement, and then we can move on to other areas. Thank you, Wen. And I think Alex, you had your hand up?
Yes,
Yeah.
good morning, everyone. I'm Alexandra Torres Galancita, and I'm with Women in Non-Traditional Employment Roles. My question is, knowing that what we do, we're just a very specific workforce development program. We only train women to get into construction and building trade, union construction and building trades. So what role do you see us playing as part of the workforce development?
That's a great question, Alex, and Adewale, jump in here.
Yeah.
If you care to. But Alex, we wanted to make sure that our outreach, our engagement efforts just covered, all communities, and thought that you all have been so, above the ahead of the curve, if you will, with connecting women to non-traditional roles. So we thought, maybe there's an opportunity here for Winter. You have so much experience on the workforce side, so we'd love to hear from you, just your thoughts. We want women to be part of this. We feel that there's a huge need, and we want to make sure that any under-resourced communities are there at the table with us. So I understand that you're, mainly focused on construction, but, this is going to be a huge lift. And so, we're thinking maybe there's a connection there between construction, between the installation of charging stations, the creation of charging hubs. So we just wanted to put it out there to say, Winter, come and join us. There might be a possible role for you. And I would love to have women as part of this effort. So
Yeah, and I would add to that.
Second part of that question is that, so if you see us, because part of it is a construction, there will be constructing the stations.
mm-hmm.
Will that work go to unions or non-union companies?
Yes, we have invited labor organizations to these meetings, Alex. I don't know if we have someone here from the unions, but we are having, that we're doing that engagement. We're trying to make sure that they are also considering apprenticeship opportunities, because they're going to be heavily involved with this effort. with the whole rollout of charging hubs. And so, those discussions are happening right now. Yeah. Yeah. Adewale, you wanted to add something?
No, go on, please.
So this is Joe Sullivan.
Hi, Joe.
This is Joe
Hey,
Sullivan with IVW Local 11, Nika.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we work with Winter, correct? You work with our electrical training center, correct?
Yes, we work with all of the
Yeah.
unions, including Local 11, to increase the number of women electricians. So my question was, is this going to be under the unions? Because we don't refer anybody that is not a union contractor.
Yeah.
Replacement.
Yeah, I'm with you. We want to create high road careers. We train them for 5 years. This is a great way to get people into the apprenticeship program. This is an important sector for that.
Yeah, and thanks for that, John. Thanks for that, Alex. Yeah, I mean, IBW has certainly been a great partner to Grid over the years as we train people, just in the renewable energy space. And Alex, I would say that we, also worked with Winter over the years to make sure that women, are part of the clean energy transition. So I think when you look at it as a complete ecosystem, we want to make sure that we're getting people from our communities into those union, career opportunities as well. And a good portion of this work will be union work. So we want to make sure we're aligned with, all the organizations that we work with day in and day out, and that we've been working with for years, within the communities that we serve. So I don't think it's outside of the ecosystem as it's been for a long time.
Thank you, Adewale. Thank you, Joe, Alex. Hector, you have your hand up?
Yes, thanks. Just wanted to make a comment and maybe ask a question, but I really appreciated the outline and planning that's gone into setting up this meeting and the advisory council and the different sort of groups giving input to the advisory council. I feel like a lot of the organizations who are experts in doing the workforce planning and supporting workers and ensuring that folks can be trained and ready for these kinds of careers are in the room. But I think something that might be missing is, or that I have questions about, are what kinds of commitments or conditions are we expecting to see from industry in terms of their commitment to actually hiring at the end of any kind of training process, their commitment to really ensuring that there's opportunities for advancement, especially as workers' skills increase. And we have organizations that are sort of leading on this work with the Energy Commission or even with CalSTART, who I think can we can figure out ways to adopt more strings for the actual industry and manufacturers of vehicles, the installers of infrastructure, whatever the private firms are that are going to be benefiting from all of this public investment in an educated workforce system. I think it's important for us to consider, well, what are the ways that we're formalizing commitments and buy-in from companies if they're going to benefit from the end result. And so I think my question that I'm leading to is, what is the appetite for requiring conditions or commitments from industry, and what are the what's sort of the willingness of maybe folks from CalSTART and the CEC to really consider commitments from the industry partners and the private firms who are going to be, who we're expecting or are supposed to be hiring and helping employ the folks that we want to see get into these jobs.
Thank you for that, Hector. That's a great comment and great question. And I'm going to ask my CalSTART colleagues to jump in here as well. But I'll give you a real quick example, and I see Brianna has her hand up here. We're working with like Zeem Solutions. It was an organization that came to us a while back and said, hey, you know, there's going to be a lot of need for charging infrastructure, right? We feel that we can help, you know, place people in jobs that deal with charging infrastructure, but as well to help us with any type of curriculum development or workforce development, right? So we're already seeing organizations starting to reach out to us, which is industry partners, which is really critical to this effort. And I know that CalSTART has launched the industry partner advisory committee as well. And so we have organizations out there that are starting to identify themselves, you know, to help with this effort. But I don't know if Alicia's still on the call, or Nate, do you want to respond to that, or anything else that we need to add there?
Yeah, sure. I think only thing that really makes me think of is electric vehicle infrastructure training programs and certificates like that really deal with this kind of specific work, and also that these opportunities. I'm wondering how we can sort of gauge interest from the group that we have here today, and see what opportunities there are, not just in like general construction. Like I know, Alexandra, that you were mentioning that, but maybe you have also seen some interest in that type of specific electric vehicle training programs. But I mean, that's something for us to discuss and try to map our interests with and opportunities. But maybe that's a discussion that Grin, maybe all of us need to have on a future meeting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thanks for trying to respond to that. I want to just make it clear, like, this is still sort of concerning. Like, I'm hearing a lot of resources that are going to help train workers and get workers to a point where they're, you know, going to have capacity for these jobs. But I'm really not hearing anything about like what we're doing to hold employers accountable to quality employment, respecting workers' rights, union wages, even if they're not a union firm. And part of my concern stems from just some experience with like CalSTART itself being opposed to there being workforce conditions or labor conditions attached to public investment in zero emissions projects, infrastructure, vehicle manufacturing incentives. So I just want to make it very clear that I think it's important that we need to adopt models that include strings on industry for committing to high road jobs and good employment opportunities for the people that we're trying to see move through this process. Thanks.
Thank you, Hector. And I would say definitely, if somebody wants to respond, but I'll just jump in real quick and say, yeah, I mean, I would like to thank you for that and that concern. And I would just say that one of, I think the goals of the committee is to make sure that we're building equity, you know, into the core of our model. And, you know, that takes the right stakeholders in the room so that we can sit down and have those conversations. And, you know, things that might not have been addressed in the past, we can sit down together and collectively figure out like what's the best way forward. You know, so it's important that we have the right partners in the room, you know, in the committee, so that we can have the discussions and the conversations we need to have to really try and get this right. Not just from, like you said, training people, but from really using a EID lens or, you know, an equity lens to inform how we do our best in carrying out this project.
Yeah, thanks for making that extra clear for me, Hector. So I'll make sure we bring that up, how we can incorporate that level of thoughtfulness into our workforce development and other related activities. But I might look to you for a future conversation on that and some of the things that you talked about. But I know you've been raising your hand a lot, Brianna, so I'll leave it up to you.
Okay, Brianna from Zeem Solutions. Thanks for having us. And first of all, thank you, Hector, for your comment. That was really interesting and sort of plays into what I was thinking about, which is that Zeem is an electric vehicle, fleet sort of as a service company. So what I see our input being in a workforce development collaboration is that, we have tools and we want to collaborate with people who have things like knowledge and curriculum and who are able, like Hector, to tell us what it takes to be not just someone who's bringing people into your workforce, but also an ethical employer. And so my question was, I guess, for Grid, about how do you see us all collaborating with each other? Obviously, we're here to collaborate with Grid and to work on that specific workforce development program, but I also think that there's a lot of knowledge here and a lot of experience. I think Hector's comments really illuminated that, and also like Alexandra talking about bringing more women into the workforce. We'd definitely be interested in learning more about that. So I guess I wanted to learn about how Grid plans to facilitate collaboration among participants.
Adewale, you want to jump in here? Or?
Yeah, I'll jump in and then you can kind of
Yeah.
follow up. But I think, when we kind of look at the function of the committee, it's really, again, to provide input as we're building out the workforce development plan, and then ensuring that, we're really supporting equity through the workforce development goals. And then finally, informing the plan and the accompanying activities. So I think this committee in itself is really going to be the ultimate decider, I would say, in ways of how we go about moving forward with this RETA project. So, if we sit down and we have the conversations that we need to have, and we hear what, the stakeholders in the committee are saying, right? And we act, not only talk about it, but we actually act on what comes out of the committee meetings. Then we can have the strategies in place to make sure that we address the concerns that are coming up today, and certainly will come up through other meetings. And as we listen to the needs of the community, having conversations. So I don't think that, Grid or any one particular organization will be the decision maker here, but rather it will be a collaborative approach and a collaborative strategy as we work towards implementation. So I think the committee overall is very important to getting this right, and that's why the committee is being formed. So I hope that answers your question, but I really think it's through collaborative action, or first collaborative kind of conversations, collaborative work, and then collaborative action that will be able to address these problems. And I'm sure everybody in this room has met 100 million times. But the only way that you actually see change is through action and not just the meetings themselves. So, I think the plan is to have the meetings, have the conversations, and then be held accountable when it comes time to the actual implementation.
Thank you for that, Adewale. And I see Veronica and Kimberly's hand up. So Veronica, do you want to go first real quick? And then, and Jacqueline, sorry.
I can go first. Veronica Wilson, UCLA Labor Center. Just a couple of quick questions, and thank you very much for all the comments so far and just the thinking together. I'm curious, you mentioned having some environmental justice communities be a part of the conversations, and community members and organizations. I'm wondering what that looks like here, and then just in general, my familiarity a little bit better with the southern end, closer to the port. What organizations you're thinking about if they're not in the room today, and what that means as far as decision making in the process of coming up with solutions together.
It's a great question. And Giovanni, I'm going to ask you to remind us about all of the organizations that participated in the Community First Technical Advisory Committee. If you can just list a few of those. I'm trying to remember myself right now, but
Yeah,
committee meetings.
absolutely. So we had, Coalition for Clean Air, right? We had the Sierra Club chapter of Los Angeles. We had what's that organization? East Yard, right? Correct. East Yard. We also had Breathe SoCal that was there as well, and will continue to be a part of those efforts. From the top of my head, I know we have more. I can go back to my list here. Let's see.
I know
Yeah,
the Watch Clean Air Coalition is
Yes.
on this call as well, which is another one on the CTAC, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So Veronica, I think, we invited probably about between 40 and 50 organizations. And so we had 26 organizations at the Community First Technical Advisory Committee. And so that was a combination of environmental justice groups, local government, academia, healthcare. I'm trying to think who else was there, but we really tried to reach out to all the different organizations, and we're hoping that we can continue to build this advisory committee. So we just had the one meeting, then a subcommittee, and so we know there's a lot more work to do, more people to involve. Oh, Jackie was there from So I mean, we've had a lot of folks that have joined on so far.
Yeah, we also had the NRDC there for the first CTAC meeting, and Climate Resolve. And then we gave the opportunity for folks that were part of that are forming part of the Community First Technology Advisory Committee. We opened it up if some of them wanted to form also part of the Workforce Development Advisory Committee. And so, the great leadership of Jacqueline from Watts Clean Air, is joining both, right? Is interested in both. So we're being flexible in that regard as well. And then there's just some folks that couldn't make it to today's meeting, right? And then there's some folks that are just going to want to only participate in the Community First Technology Advisory Committee. And so as we take all of that input through that participation in that advisory committee, we'll make sure it translates over into the rest of the work that we're doing as well. So they won't be operating just in silos.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from Kimberly, from Dr. Collins, and then from Jackie.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here. I'm Kimberly Collins with Cal State San Bernardino, the Leonard Transportation Center. I just want to, it's sort of the same kind of, it kind of continues on with the conversation we just had, but thinking about, universities and then community colleges and all of the different roles, similar but different roles that we play in the community. Have you given any thought, how can universities and the academy really help? How can we be of service? What could be our role? Because, the UCs are different from the CSUs. And again, we're different from the community colleges. And how can we, I'd like to help define that if I can, but to think about the different roles of the academy, if it's, more research, if it is curriculum, what piece? Have you given that any thought?
Yeah, and Dr. Collins, I would just mention to the group here that we have been meeting, like with Dr. Rawls from Cal State Dominguez Hills, talking about how you all might be of support in this effort. And Dr. Rawls, if you want to jump in and just talk about, like some of the discussions that we've had, this is all preliminary. We thought we'd throw that wide net out there to see, okay, who needs to be here, what type of involvement, from the different communities, from the community colleges, Cal States, and so I don't know, Dr. Rawls, if you want to jump in here and just share your thoughts real quick.
Certainly. Well, I know specifically from my role, and of course I invited Dr. Collins, so I had some thoughts about how CSU SB would participate. But from my role here at the campus in workforce development, I'm looking at how our students, in particular students of color, both of our institutions have high numbers of student diversity. Right. And so how are our students represented in these innovative technologies of tomorrow? How does this impact them where they live? And so I particularly want to be here to look out for the future of work from the lens of my campus community. So one of the things that I do here is I use labor market information to identify trends in particular areas and pipelines. So while we're talking electric batteries and electric vehicles, there are other people who will be impacted, other areas of work that will be impacted by these new technologies. And what does that look like? And what are the training programs that my campus needs to provide for to be competitive in 5 years, 10 years? And so I'm really looking at the future of work and how it could impact our curriculum and our research, frankly.
Thank you for that, Dr. Rolls. Appreciate it. Dr. Collins, anything else there? Or?
No, that's great. I'm just, again, I just want to make sure that I provide value. So I want to make sure that I'm going down that road and know where we can provide some assistance and some help. And because the CSUs are different in the curriculum that we provide, and thinking, Wen's program over at Cal Poly and engineering, civil engineering is very different from our program here over at the business college. So even that and the intricacies that go into universities, just putting that kind of on the table.
Yeah, I definitely want to add though that everyone has a set of expertise, right? And something to contribute to the table, and it's going to be all of the above in terms of what our academic partners feel like their strong suit is. Some will say that we've developed this curriculum, so what, maybe bringing in curriculum ideas to the table, to the group here, for us to figure out what's going to make sense here as the technology continues to evolve, right? That's going to be something that's going to be valuable to bring to the table. Others are going to bring research, others are going to bring trends that they're seeing with analysis that they're doing, right? So all of that is just going to be incredibly valuable as we form put together our workforce development plan for this project. So I feel like there isn't just one way to contribute to the project. I see Wen had his hand up, and also Daniel.
Yeah, and wait a minute, Giovanni, is Jackie still here? She's had her hand up for a little bit here.
She waved it off.
Yes, I took it down, but I just want to say this is excellent discourse, and this is the perfect group to really develop that roadmap, or we call it workforce development plan, because then that's when we can better connect the dots to the educational institutions and just across the board to everything, especially in terms of workforce development, because even I myself, I have an apprenticeship program for global trade where people, they can have their own businesses and be suppliers to the industry. And so it's so many things to consider. And so I would like to yield the floor to the next.
Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate that. Yeah. And let's see, was it Wen?
Yes, thank you, Estella and Giovanni. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just want to echo Kimberly's comments. Kim, thank you for expressing our concern from the CSU part, right? So no worries about your contribution from the business department. I think back in the summer, everybody Kim and us, we have worked together and developed a university transportation center proposal dedicated to promoting the workforce development in zero commission track, right, field. I think, you know, we have developed some great ideas already over there. So probably we can, you know, pass some great ideas to the committee here if some time allows in the future. I'm very confident this is there is some great place for us to contribute. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Wen. That's a great comment, absolutely. And I do want, Daniel, you're next, but I wanted to point out Hector's comment here back to Dr. Collins. It'd be great to think about the development of an industry-wide credential that this training could lead to. Lots of these fields are so new. The industry is still developing, absolutely. So training is often narrowly tailored to fit a certain employee's needs. It would be better to have a credential that sets a skill level and is portable to multiple employers. I completely agree there, Hector. Yeah, I think you're spot on there. So something that, you know, we're going to, you know, include in our feedback from today's meeting, and make sure that we're you know, including this in any, you know, type of work that we're doing. So thank you, Hector. Daniel, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you so much, Stella. Always great seeing you and Adewale and all the other partners here on the call. I just wanted to piggyback, I believe, what Hector mentioned in the chat and a few other folks. I think with respect to community colleges, universities, and the like, articulation agreements are critical, where folks are able to earn college credits while participating in vocational or technical training. You know, as a means to a bigger and better opportunity as they continue to matriculate to college. They can also earn while they learn as well. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback, put an extra stamp on that comment. And then I also want to say that one of the examples that I just want to kind of bring to the group, last year, Lacey, we held an electric vehicle maintenance training program. And we partnered with LATTC's Transportation Workforce Institute. And I see Jess on the call, and that was a really great example. The students went through an accelerated 5-week course. Subsequently and concurrently, they earned 3 college credits as well. And so I think there's definitely space for that. And I also think that there's space, just to kind of back up a bit earlier from, you know, the job placement opportunities and comments. I think there's also plenty of space for non-union opportunities as well. We know that union and non-union jobs are not mutually exclusive. There's space for both. They both can exist simultaneously. And here at Lacey, we have a lot of startups that have provided incredible training and job opportunities for some of our fellows and workforce participants as well. Adewale has been a huge supporter of the program, and definitely happy to share more along the way, but just wanted to share those comments.
Sorry, thank you, Daniel. We really appreciate your comments there. Absolutely. We have Aaron, then Veronica, and then we have some questions in the chat. Aaron? I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure if you already mentioned this, but I was just curious if you have an estimated time frame where you envision moving from the planning stage to the implementation and rollout phase of the corridors, the first corridor.
So Nate, the timeline, Nate, is, you know, like for end of 2024. Is that correct?
Let me check the schedule. But that sounds right. Yeah, okay. End of 2024, that's when we start to think of, that's when we're really getting into the meat of planning for phase 2 corridor network build out. And then this project, it's going to run until at least 2026.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you, Aaron. A lot of work ahead. You know, so again, this is the pilot. This is the first phase. We're counting on learning so much during, you know, the rest of this year and into 2023, which will then you know, help us to launch that next phase, the workforce piece, most definitely. will be part of that. Veronica, you had another question?
Thanks. Yeah. Hi again. I'm curious. Two questions I think came to mind. One is, and maybe you mentioned this, what employer contributions, and especially financially, are either happening or available or can be a part of trainings for the workforce. So, do they have capacity to put in part of that cost? And then the second question is, what research could be useful, knowing this is very new and there aren't many pilots out there perhaps, but finding out what models can be used in a comparative analysis and some evaluation of what you're doing in your pilot, and if you have something like that set up, or if some researchers could be of help.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask my colleagues to jump in here too. But, I know that the evaluation piece is going to be critical, Veronica, throughout this process, right? And so, again, we're hoping, that this committee will help us with that, as well as, like you heard from Dr. Rawls, other, representatives from academia that will be able to help us with that effort, maybe UCLA as well, right? And I'm trying to remember the first part of your question. My God, I'm so sorry.
Too much in there. It was, let me see if I can remember it. A question about employers contributing to training costs.
Oh, if employers will contribute. That's a good question. We haven't talked about that yet, to be honest with you. But I don't know, CalSTART, Nate, any thoughts there?
I mean, I like that idea. Ideally, yes. So we could at least bring it up to partners and see who's willing to take that on.
If there are unions, the unions will pay for the training.
That's true.
That's good to know.
That is so true. Yeah. So still, a lot to uncover here. But, we appreciate you bringing that up. That's definitely going to be in our notes section. Dr. Rawls, did you want to respond to this question as well?
Yeah, I was just thinking, so I heard if it's unions, they'll pay for it, but I'm also just thinking, how does this project, or how could this project interact with the California apprenticeship initiatives? So there's a lot of opportunities there, and I do a lot of work in the digital and credential area, right? So stackable credentials. So then maybe we're not talking about a electric vehicle, electric truck certification, but a certification in particular skills that the industry deems necessary. So just kind of throwing out some of the other, right, strings that are coming together as I hear the conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Rawls. Appreciate that. Real quick, we have a couple more questions in the chat, but Giovanni, how are we doing on time?
Yeah, we have about 4 or 5 more minutes just for any more feedback, comments, and then we're gonna move it along to closing items, just so that we're mindful of everyone's time. So okay. 5 more minutes of comments. This is a great discussion.
Yeah, it is, and I hate to cut it off at all here. I'm just looking for the questions here. Oh, from Juan Romero. Training partners, will they be providing short and long-term viable certification training opportunities? So you heard Dr. Rawls talk about that. Will participants be receiving support services, PPE, boots, tools, etc.? Yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure that that's part of any programs that we help to develop. Will participants be co-enrolled in city or county workforce? Ooh, good question. Training facilities, will they be located in different parts of the city and counties? Yeah, so really good questions, Juan. I don't know if I can answer all of those, but we would love to have participants co-enrolled in a city and county programs, and then training facilities. I think we're going to need at least 3, 4, 5 just along the 7, 10, 10 corridor. So still remains to be seen where those are going to be located, which schools will be involved, but definitely we appreciate your questions, and we'll keep that in mind as we're starting to build this out.
Yeah, I would say again, just to echo, like that's also part of the work of the committee, right? All to figure all these things out so that when we actually roll out and implement these programs, like we've addressed all of those questions. We've considered those different things, and those questions can only come out of the stakeholders that are going to be in the room. So whether it's looking at the education piece or looking at the direct on the ground support, that's kind of the reason of the committee, so that we're not spending like just 5 minutes with this, but we're actually getting in depth and taking an in-depth look and coming up with viable solutions to put the best programming together possible.
Thank you, Adewale. I do see one more question from Steve Manson. Current community college district, how are the activities of this group envisaged to integrate with activity in the Central Valley? Be honest with you, Steve, we're so focused on the pilot right now. Everything depends on the pilot, and if we're able to do complete our objectives here on this first part of the whole potential rollout. So, but we know that this project, the state is looking at how can we replicate this in other areas, and so that's part of the plan. We just don't know when it will happen. Okay. All right. Giovanni, I think those are all the questions. You have some really good comments. We'll keep track of all of this, incorporate those into the meeting summary for everyone. But Giovanni, if you can just, close us out, or let's see, where are we at?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much for the wonderful feedback and discussion that we just had. And please keep them coming. Let us know. Feel free to send us a message via email of additional feedback that you may have that maybe you couldn't get across right now, or that may come to mind once this meeting ends, right? That always happens. So, feel free to send us your additional thoughts, questions that we can still incorporate right into the feedback we got from this first meeting. And we're going to keep this going. So we're gonna skip this discussion question. This we put together in the event that it was crickets during Q&A, but it was not crickets. We had no crickets. We had a great discussion, and we were just trying to spark conversation. But a lot of what we wanted to hear already kind of is coming out, and we got a good taste of that. So we're going to skip through this discussion piece and move on to the ask. I'll kick it off to my colleague Adewale. And again, we will be emailing the presentation to everyone as well. I got something in the chat about that, but Adewale, go for it.
Thank you, Giovanni. And thanks everybody for your input, your comments, and your questions. I heard a lot of great things and a lot of concerns. And I think, those are the people that we want in the room. We want in the committee working with us to get this right. So kind of the project next steps and the near-term actions. We need to do fleet needs and a BEV truck technology assessment. Really ID. Oh, I'm sorry. I am all in Nate's part of the slides. My apologies. Giovanni, am I in the wrong place?
Yeah, Adewale, this will be
yeah, I meant
WDAC.
to. Yeah, I meant to introduce Nate, but yeah, the first thing we want to do is ask for membership for the WDAC, and then I'll pass it to Giovanni. But if you could just put in the chat if you would consider membership with the committee itself. And then Giovanni's going to get into a poll.
Yes, first we'll give everyone a minute to just type in if you think you can commit to meeting once a quarter with us. We do understand that some folks may need to take this back to their leadership and discuss with their teams. So we understand that. But those that are sure right now whether they can or cannot, we'd like to know that right off the bat. And those that would like to take it back to their team, let us know. Just type it in the chat. Let me discuss with my team and we'll email you back. That's okay. But at least we kind of want to get a sense of that. So I'll give folks a minute to put that in the chat, and then I'll go ahead and launch a poll for the subcommittee.
Oh, this is great. Thank you. Thank you all. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Jackie, as always. Giovanni, why don't we go ahead and jump into the polls, and it looks like everyone's, you know, just thinking about it, chewing on it a little bit, but the responses are coming in, so.
Perfect. And so I just went ahead and similarly, a question of those that would like to convene in a smaller group for the subcommittee to review the draft workforce development plan. Let us know, and then you know, we'll email you separately to try to coordinate a meeting there.
Thank you.
So we'll give it another minute for folks to respond to that subcommittee poll.
Nice.
All right, just a couple more minutes here. Well, a couple of seconds, excuse me. All right, well, I'll go ahead and end this here. I think that's we got the responses we were seeking here from the attendees. And then I don't know what happened on my second poll in terms of time of day, but if you can put it in the chat for those that stated that they would like to be part of the subcommittee, if you can put in the chat typically what days work best for you and what time of day works best for you, then I'll go ahead and pull that from the, you know, downloaded after the meeting, and then we'll put it together to figure out a time to convene the subcommittee. So if you can, again, share what time of day and then what day of the week usually would work better to convene as a subcommittee for like an hour and a half.
Maybe it'd be helpful if we
Oh, there you
if
go.
we let them know
There it
when we
is.
would we're trying to have this subcommittee meeting. What is it, in 2 or 3 weeks, Giovanni?
Yes, like in 3 weeks. Before the Thanksgiving break, we would like to convene some folks in early November. Yeah. All right. So as those are coming in, I'll kick it off to Nate.
Thanks, Giovanni. So yeah, just a brief overview of the project next steps and near-term actions. We are discussing with fleets all of their needs and how to map well what opportunities we have with RETA to plan for their needs with the technology and the battery electric vehicle truck technology assessment. We're talking with OEMs and we're identifying technology development partners. It's something that I'm sort of doing right now. I'm at an event here in Portland trying to speak to all these key partners in the game. And we're filling out our website with a lot of the materials we've already created. We're working with Grid to create materials that aren't just specific to industry experts, but everyone we want involved and community members. And we're developing the heat map for the corridor that we're building out. We're working through our planning with site hosts to coordinate our development of those pilot sites at those 2 key locations. And we're preparing the Southern California Edison lab where businesses, manufacturers can test their high power charging equipment.
Great. Thank you, Nate. And then just some next steps that we're looking to accomplish for this Workforce Development Advisory Committee for this particular project. You know, in the near term, we would like to obviously get the commitments. You know, we got some right now in the chat. Thank you all that were able to get us a response now. And then, hopefully by the end of this month, we can get a clear picture of everyone that would like to commit. So we'll be on standby waiting from folks that would like to take it back to their team and get back to us. You know, feel free to email me with those responses if you want to first take it back to your team. But we would like to, accomplish that clear picture of who's going to be committing to this by the end of this month. And then similarly, any feedback you have on this presentation, any additional comments that maybe you couldn't get in or came as an afterthought after this meeting, feel free to send that to us via email as well, as we'd like to compile all the feedback and comments from everyone on this presentation. And then again, as we've alluded to, we want to convene this subcommittee. And again, we're eyeing last week of October, early first week of November. So we'll get back to folks on trying to schedule that subcommittee meeting prior to the Thanksgiving break. So thank you all for sending in through the chat your time of day and days of the week that would work best. And so again, we'll compile all that information to get a meeting scheduled as soon as possible. And then we're also eyeing some pertinent industry partner presentations that we are lining up. We would like to do these. These will be separate from the quarterly advisory committee meetings, and they're not mandatory, but it's something that we want to put together to help inform and educate all of our partners on just the technology that's being developed. So to better understand, electric trucks, the heavy duty charging that goes into it. The technology continues to evolve. So we want to stay up to date with what's going on in that regard. And so what better way than working closely with our industry partners that are developing these technologies, that are deploying them, that are working already with them to help us all understand what really goes into it and what's going to be needed in terms of skills for a future workforce. So we'll be putting together, some optional industry partner presentations in that regard. And we're trying to see if we can do one in early November prior to the Thanksgiving break as well. So stay posted on that. Stay tuned. We'll be sending out an email on that. And then lastly, when we convene the subcommittee, we'll give folks, until the end of like that first week of November to, give us their final feedback and recommendations on that draft plan that we review together during the subcommittee, so that then we can send it over to our other colleagues to review over at CalSTART and EPRI and the CEC to review this draft plan with the stakeholder feedback that we acquire. As promised, I wanted to show you all the calendar of the future quarterly meetings that for this particular advisory committee for the WDAC. So you don't have to jot them all down real quick. I'll again send this in an email, next steps email, and we'll be providing a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. But just want to let you know, the next meeting will be slated to take place on January 12th, 2023. Typically, these are like Thursday meetings. I think there's a one Wednesday meeting, but these are the quarterly meetings for next year. And with that, just wanted to provide our contact information here that you can reach out to us. Here's the CalSTART team. And then here is the contact information for the GRID team. So feel free to reach out to us with any questions. And again, letting us know, if you can commit to these efforts, if you haven't done so already. I'll hand it over to my colleagues Adewale and Stella for any final words.
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you all for being here today. My no pun intended, but my battery was certainly energized just from being in this meeting and hearing everybody's, I think, eagerness and excitement about this opportunity, but wanting to get it right. And that's what keeps me committed to the work, because I know that we're committed to the communities that we serve. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. I hope that you will all join us as we push this work forward. I will not be on the calls regularly. Shamika Dixon, who's the Director of Workforce Development for Greater Los Angeles, will be leading this effort, but I'll certainly be in the background and happy to provide support wherever possible. So also feel free to reach out to me whenever the need may occur. But thank you again. I appreciate your time and energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Adewale, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. We know you are all very, very busy people. And so we really appreciate your time and your interest in this project. So look forward to speaking with you again and working on this project. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Oh.